Welcome to the Meria Heller Show, on the net since 2000 and still going strong. If you feel like you're not getting the real news, if you feel like you're not connected spiritually, you have found your home. Meria covers a wide range of topics as only a snarky New Yorker can. Straight up, no chaser. No censorship, no corporate sponsors, thus true freedom of speech. Your subscription gives you unlimited access as a member of the smartest audience on earth. Relax and enjoy the education. Now here's Meria.
Good morning, world. Meria here, alive and kicking. Welcome to Hell and High Water with my co-host and friend, Chuck Ochelli. If you're not familiar with Chuck, get over to Ochelli.com. There's a live link right here. And we usually do raise a bit of hell and high water. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning, Meria. You know, I guess there's some places that could use a little more high water today, but there's a lot of hell on earth, it looks like to me. So, appropriate show that we're only going to take an hour to do. But probably we need about 3-4 hours just to begin to scratch the surface of what is, right?
There's so much. I mean, just briefly scanning the news this morning. I'm like, oh my God. It's like every morning I wake up and I go over to my Apple News and I say, okay, what's the horror story for today? And that's just the way it is. And, you know, it's hard to stay in balance when you have these, it's like getting constantly punched in the stomach every day. But then there's good news too. So, you know, we have to just keep doing what we're doing and ask for the strength to keep doing what we do. You know, this morning, I have to tell you, very interestingly, somebody had sent me an article about Andrew Jackson and how a president doesn't have to be impeached to be rendered powerless. And when I was reading this super long article about Andrew Jackson, and I posted it on my Twitter, I realized that if ever there was a case for reincarnation of Andrew Jackson, it's absolutely Donald Trump.
Ooh, well, you know, I got to argue with you just a touch, and here's why. Why didn't he retain any of Jackson's boldness? And really, look, as despicable as a lot of Jackson's actions were, when it comes to, you know, genocides and little things like that, it might be interesting to note that Jackson was certainly a guy who was fearless, and if he's the reincarnation of Andrew Jackson, he didn't retain any of that.
Well, maybe he's paying some karma. Maybe he lost all his good traits in his reincarnation. But, you know, Jackson was an open, bold, open-faced racist. You know, he went around the country sowing discord and his open racism. He thought that he could just do whatever he wanted, you know, without any oversight. You look at all these things and then you look at Trump today, and I mean, I don't even know which story to start with him. I don't know whether it's him insulting France today, saying that France might get invaded by Germany again today, telling Macron to put France first. Him not showing up at not only the military ceremony in France, but not even he nor Pence at Arlington yesterday, attacking the press, trying to call the election in Florida and discount the votes. I don't even know where to start. I'm like, oh God, it's like every morning. But I did see something positive where the press is deciding to stop covering all his insane tweets. And I was like, I actually posted a comment and said, the only way I want to see this guy covered at this point is with a sheet. You know, I don't know what's going to stop him. He's like a wild dog, you know, and I knew this midterm, if he lost the midterm, which he did, was going to make him even crazier than he is. So there you have it. And then I watched him, I don't even know where the hell he was, probably while he was in France. And I have to tell you, even though I'm not saying he looked good before, but he looks instantly 10 years older. His skin was more sallow, was more concave. I saw new wrinkles on his face. And I was like, wow.
It could be the rain he feared had washed away some of his foundation or whatever that orange crap is made of, or sprayed on top of. Interesting thing, though, a guy who criticizes other countries' leadership when, wait a minute, I thought we were totally safe from the North Korean nuclear threat. Apparently we're not, despite the fact that he fell in love, right?
Right.
Does everybody forget that?
Right.
Oh, wait a minute, the stock market is doing badly now because Democrats are threatening to harass him because he was the guy who kept that going, right?
Right.
A lot of interesting stuff where a guy can make all sorts of critiques of others while he doesn't seem to have anything other than a rhetorical lock on those that don't think for themselves. I mean, that's about it. I mean, what do you do with a guy who's, throwing out, and look, I'm not a fan of Jim Acosta's, but, throwing him out of a press conference, then having his lapdog give the ultimate stink eye to Acosta over allegedly assaulting a female intern with a tape that was clearly enhanced to make it look that way.
Right.
Where do you begin?
Right. I mean, I watched that tape about 20 times. If anybody was being pushy and shovey, it was that girl. And I was like, okay, I'm watching this. I don't see what they're talking about, let alone how he was talking to women reporters. Sit down, shut up, you're a loser, that's a racist question. I mean, what the hell? But like I said, I'm no fan of, the MSM, the mainstream media. But, they have a right to their lies the same way the Inquirer and Mr. Pecker had the right to cover up Trump's payoffs to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, which now they have proof of. So it's like, okay, what is it going to take to get this guy to either resign or out of office? I mean, how much more? Everybody, every day with one big story, I always see the mainstream press say, this is what's going to end Trump's presidency. But nothing seems to end it.
Well, assumptions that he could resign over something are foolish. This is the problem with entitled people that have been granted fortunes and somehow think they are infallible based on the size of their bank accounts in this country, and the idea that people support them really, truthfully, based on exactly just that. The issue is they have no concept of reality. And this guy, he talked today, literally, looked like to me about how the presidency is supposed to be in a statement issued. The presidency should be respected. The White House should be respected. I found that highly laughable.
Right. He's disrespected everything. Remember when he said the White House was a dump when he was spending all his time at Mar-a-Lago?
Mm-hmm.
He shit on everything that is American. He shit on all our allies. And he wants to be respected when he's the most disrespectful person I've ever seen in my life. But I'll tell you this. When I looked at him last night, because I check out the news late at night not too late because I need to sleep. But I was checking him out. I think it was on YouTube. And when I looked at him, I'll tell you what, he doesn't look like he's going to live through this. He just looked the worst I've ever seen. And I think that all his evil, my mother would say his evil has caught up with him. Let's face it, the Democrats already have 85 investigations they're ready to start. And that out of the 85 of them are going to prove that he's a criminal.
Well, see, but here's the thing about that. What is going to actually get done about it? I really do not hold my breath waiting for the investigations to pan out and actually accomplish anything. He's still got a lock in the Senate. This means that the prospect for impeachment is not there. Even if you believe that the system was not set up so that they protect their own. Just to try and look at it from an objective point of view, the votes are not there to impeach him. He's not going to be the guy that resigns. You don't want to see anything really bad happen to him directly because then he becomes a martyr to the mob that he's assembled.
Look, no one is talking about when he didn't go to the military cemetery in France, and he didn't go to Arlington. Both reasons were because it was raining. Today he's saying the Secret Service wouldn't allow him to go because, his helicopter was foggy, Well, Arlington, I think, is 6 miles from the White House. But no one is positing. And listen, this only is I haven't spent enough time really observing him, but nobody's talking about the fact that this guy is 73 years old. He's fat. He's out of shape. His blood pressure's off the chart. Who knows what kind of level of dementia he's at. But perhaps this guy also has pneumonia, which a lot of old people get, or some kind of sickness where he can't be outside, besides what the mental hell that he's putting himself through. Because remember, with his ego, Chuck, he can't take people not loving him. He can't take the fact that this election showed everybody voted against Donald Trump this year. And that kind of stuff could spin out of control in him and cause him to cause his own death. So I'm not looking for impeachment. Number one, that takes too long. Resign, who knows? They're talking about his son getting indicted. I think Mueller is supposed to release some indictments this week. These are all to somebody as egotistical as him who needs that spotlight, that love. That's like daggers stabbing him in the chest over and over again. So I'm going to keep observing him to see what I intuitively pick up in his aura and his energy field. But everybody in Europe said he was on very low energy. And today he wants to fire everybody, including the gal over at Homeland Security.
Well, what's fascinating here, Meria, is that, yes, I understand how your intuition is leading you, and I see a similar thing, that the guy's health is clearly declining. But here's the other issue, the alleged opposition. I also do not trust them. An interesting convenience, a sort of a dramatic mechanism here, is this guy that he's bringing in as the acting attorney general. Now, why?
Whitaker.
Something that is not being discussed in the MSM or by anybody else, because they don't have the background for it, is that during congressional investigations, like the slew of them we had in the 1970s, where a whole lot of corruption and manipulation by the Central Intelligence Agency was revealed through various programs to try and assassinate Castro, the interference with other world leaders, the misdirection, the revelations of MK Ultra, all these things happened during congressional investigations in the 1970s. But an untold story about those congressional investigations is how they were limited and how they continue to be limited right now. How is it done? Well, a guy like this attorney general, who is the acting attorney general under Trump, could easily limit them financially,
right,
and make no claims as to, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just cutting down on this wasteful expense, basically.
Right.
And they did this several times. If you take a look at the House Select Committee on Assassinations in the 1970s, it had a different head at its inception. The guy's name was Richard Sprague. And, Dick Sprague was a prosecutor, and he wished to go after those involved in the JFK, MLK, and even in the beginning, the RFK assassination, as if he was a prosecutor. As soon as that happened, they did things like defund their ability to have phones, take away their ability to pay staff, reduce their resources to almost nothing in order to oust the guy who was actually trying to do his job. Now, this is obviously a different form of congressional investigation, but the very same thing could occur here, even despite the Democratic majority. And let's not forget that the motives of the Democrats might also be limited by the fact that being sold out to foreign interests is something
Israel,
that goes, both ways, both sides of the aisle.
I agree.
So,
well, here's my answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, this morning, the state of Maryland is asking a judge to make Rod Rosenstein the acting attorney general. And he would have been next in line. So already there are legal things being put into motion to correct that. We'll see if it happens. The other thing is, when you look at the Democrats that were elected, okay, a majority of them are progressive Democrats. Several of them, I think of Ocasio, that Puerto Rican girl in New York, totally against Israel. The two young Muslim women that were also nominated to Congress, also anti-Israel's interference in Congress, AIPAC, etc. So, like Obama would say, it's not just going to take one election to fix this, but there's a different breed of Democrats that have gotten elected. Young, smart people that can actually represent the 99% because people want to make fun of them because they can't afford to move to D.C. But who better to represent us? Because I couldn't afford a $2,700 apartment in D.C. Can you?
No, even in my best days, I wouldn't have been able to really pull that off, Maria. That is a highly expensive prospect. And what's fascinating about Cortez is not only this interaction with the Republicans and as a point of resistance, but some interesting things that she's already stating about the larger corporations and their abuse of populations and sort of taking advantage of economically challenged areas in order to prosper even more than they already do. She's attacking Amazon,
right.
And their business model, which is the same thing that really destroyed a lot of Main Street when it came to the Walmart business model and the Borg they created across the country. So it's fascinating to see somebody like this actually getting into a position of power, and it will be fascinating to see because these are legitimate people that feel as though they can derail the continuously slow motion train wreck that this country has become.
Absolutely. Well, some people refer to them as Bernie-crats. Bernie, a lot of the people that he backed in this election got elected. Some of the people, like Jesus, I'm trying to think how many, I don't remember the percentage. A lot of the people that Obama was backing, he had higher people he backed win than Trump. I think the majority, like 85% of the people Trump stumped for, lost. So, when Trump said this election is about me, he thought that was a good thing because he's an egotist. But it was about him, and it was about rejecting him. And shock of all shocks, Chuck, last night, finally, they announced the winner of the Senate here in this used to be red state of Arizona, and I've been here since 91. A woman for the first time nominated to the Senate to replace Jeff Flake, and a Democrat, first time since 1976. So if you can flip a state like Arizona, there's hope for everybody. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, despite the fact that everybody is playing their usual games, trying to steal, abscond with, manipulate, set up, take away people, and disenfranchise individuals in particular places. Coincidentally, they're usually poor neighborhoods. It is what it is. It does seem as though we've got something changing. Now, can it really do battle with the great machine? This is the big question. And while that's happening, of course, another big question and another interesting, let's just dip back into the embarrassment pool again for a minute. A guy who's talking about, I'm not going to send any more federal aid to Puerto Rico.
Right.
And if California doesn't wise up real quick, I'm not going to help them anymore because, after all, they are to blame for the fires that are just, suddenly rainy season is now fire season in California. But, hey, nothing like some sort of change in the climate, maybe? Is that a possibility? I don't know.
Well, Australia's on fire today. Listen, these major fires are happening around the world. India is out of water, okay? They don't know where they're going to get water for their people from. And yet, everybody wants to pretend in this crooked criminal administration of grifters, as Seth Meyers calls them, that global warming, climate change, earth changes, whatever you want to call it, isn't real. Okay? And, how many times in the past few years have I reported how much they're cutting the firefighting budget throughout the country? Okay? How much he took from FEMA to do his stupid freaking border patrol, okay, and arrest, parents and children. Here's a guy who just wants it all for himself. I have in my all my life, remember, the first president I remember was Eisenhower, but I was born when Harry Truman was president, Chuck. And I've never seen a president so openly hate his own people like this man. I mean, everything that comes out of his mouth is hate. There's never any compassion. There's never any, oh, it's terrible what's happening in California, or we have to help our people. It's always blame, blame, blame. Okay, even when that shooting happened in the synagogue and half his family's supposed to be fake Jews, what did he say? He didn't say anything about sorrow. He said they should have had armed guards there. Okay, but the next mass shooting, who were the first people shot? The armed guards and the cops. Okay, so you have a person totally devoid of any normal human emotion, compassion, empathy. He is only in it for himself, and as he proved again this morning, by rejecting a cybersecurity pact with the world, he sided with Russia and North Korea and voted against it. Well, what reason would he have except the fact that that's the only way he got elected? And it wasn't just Russia throwing the election his way. Israel had a huge part in it.
No, I would not be shocked at all to learn that that's the reality. And I'll tell you something else about a lot of this interesting intrigue that's being put in front of people about Acosta and the press and his ridiculous remarks and just, speaking the way that he does. Some people think that this is a sign of him getting nervous and kind of getting sweaty palms. I do not intuitively interpret it that way. Believe it or not, although he's under a lot of stress, I actually believe that he is becoming bolder because he truly believes that his support is much larger. He believes that the people are on his side, but the press is against him. That Antifa, the same people that, which, by the way, I question very strongly whether there was an organized attack on Tucker Carlson. But anyway, a lot of things seem to be staged to make a point. Mm-hmm. And I believe that's another situation where if somebody objectively views it, they'll find that, first of all, this Antifa thing is a non-existent, ridiculous talking point where people are being hired to appear as, uniformed anarchists, which is an oxymoron in and of itself. But anyway, all of this going on, I do believe, is meant to keep us distracted from the fact that there is a much broader agenda being put into place here, that the victory of the 1 or the half of 1% is being assured and marshaled forward, while the military-industrial complex gets its bones, as it should, according to those in power. And all of that, and we are left to contend with these non-issues as distractions.
Exactly, and I see, people say, well, don't you, when I say the press shouldn't cover him, they're like, well, then how will we know what he does? I said, they can put it in print. We don't have to see this guy on film. When you put a camera on him, he's in heaven. Okay, this guy thinks he's a movie star. So, take the cameras away. You can still cover his insanity. God knows he puts it out there for the whole world to see. But why cover everything he does? And I think up to this point, everything he does say is deliberate. I think it's very well thought out, even though it sounds like insanity, because it's all distraction and deflection. But sooner or later, it's still not gonna last. It can't last because everybody's waking up and saying, this guy's nuts. Okay, he's destroying this country.
Yeah, True, but the thing is, it's not articulated well because it's not meant for consumption by those of us who have some intelligence. It's meant for those who don't, number one. Number two, interesting thing that continues to be there that nobody, again, except you and I discuss it. Right. me and J.P. Satilli discuss it on occasion, but basically it seems as though only Italians pick up on this. I don't know why. Here's the thing. You notice the criticism from the CNNs and all that good stuff. You got to be kind to your sponsors when you're in, broadcast mainstream media. And the fact is that CNN takes money from the Trump campaign, the political action committees that support everything from Kavanaugh to various little sub projects that are tied to Trump continuously. So it seems to me as though it is part of their business model and support of their paid sponsors.
Well, of course.
See, they call this native advertising. To continuously keep him in the face of the public. That's really what it's about. If they criticize him, okay, they provide a foil.
Right.
If they're talking about him, they have to mention his accomplishments. They legitimize him by continuously talking about his influence. So, although it appears to the layman as though this is a constant critique of, and oh my, they're the opposition, the truth is they're business partners.
Of course. And their critique
you
is
know,
mild compared to our critique. But I don't have any sponsors. I've never had any sponsors. I don't want any sponsors. I don't want anybody telling me what to say. And years ago, when I was approached, I was told that, I would have to censor myself for sponsors or for stockholders. And I turned those jobs down, even though, I would have been on easy street financially. There's no way I could sell out that way, Chuck. But people also have to realize Trump News, Fox News, which they might as well call Trump News, is owned, 1/3 ownership of Fox News is the Saudis. So, those are Trump's dancing partners. Khashoggi could have been slaughtered 20 times in front of Trump. He's not going to break his ties with the Saudis. He owes them money like he owes Russia, like he owns Deutsche Bank. So I think that maybe the only person that's going to really push for truth on these investigations will turn out to be Bernie Sanders. We'll see. We just have to take that we'll see attitude.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to, but I just, in the face of all of what's going on, I don't understand how people don't catch on to this idea that, the liberal MSNBC. Well, notice that they take a lot of money from the Petroleum Council of America or whatever it's called. Kind of interesting. That doesn't seem like a liberal sponsor of any sort, does it? I mean, I'm just spitballing here.
Listen, they can't bite the hand. They can't bite the hand that feeds them. And what was it in the 70s when the CIA said they own 80-90% of the media, and that was in the 70s. So we can for me, if I didn't have the gift of interpreting what they put out and see what they're not telling us, I wouldn't be able to give people an intelligent opinion on what's really happening. It reminds me, you remember Danny Schechter? Well, I had Danny on my show. He's passed several years ago, but he used to call himself, he had a nickname for himself. I forget what it was, but it was something like a news detector or a deflector. But that guy had a nose to break down any story. And it was just natural to him. Kind of like Dave McGowan. It was natural to him. He immediately could see through the bullshit of what we were being told. But we didn't get any big paydays. Dave didn't get any support while he was alive. Do you know what I mean? We do what we do because we must.
Right. Interesting thing, again, is that people venerate all sorts of individuals and raise them to iconic status after they're gone.
Right.
And don't support them while they're alive. Interesting thing, too, is that I know some of the media covered this, certainly, but I wanted to get your thoughts on Stan Lee because, he passed away.
Yes.
And he had been through an interesting foray in his lifetime, having, the corporate sharks come and try and take all of his blood at one point. Certainly a creator of various things. And the idea that he passed away, again, we're seeing the icons of old are now moving along. But, I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Have you thought about discussing him and his contribution to the...
I got to tell you, my son-in-law, Stan Lee, is his favorite person on the face of the earth. So I was kind of sad to even let my son-in-law know yesterday because I knew it was probably destroying him because he's a very talented artist himself. But Stan Lee, as a kid, he was one of my favorite cartoonists. He was one of my favorite artists, and when you look at him, he created characters we could look up to. He created characters that had morals. He created heroes for us to look at. So, and of course, he was 95 years old when he died. Okay. So it's not like he left too soon. But he gave us, such great things, and I think that his last movie, Black Panther, could very well be one of the best things he's ever done, because you saw even how that movie split America and showed the racists who were so upset that it had an all-black cast. But I thought it was a fabulous movie. Do you know what I mean? So he was always giving us messages, and he was always giving us hope. So to me, he probably had a lot of real spirituality, and gave us his people we can look up to. Today, who do kids have to look up to? Who's their heroes?
Well, see, and the fascinating thing is that when all of the comic books do fade away after preservation leaves us, and if the human family survives, a couple of 100 years or maybe another 1,000 years, I envision a time when these characters could literally become part of a new religion, very much like the things that are out there now. However, if people really do follow the templates that he provided, it'll be a lot cleaner and a lot more sensible than what it is we are confronted with today.
Right.
These are the kinds of icons he created. So I very much tip my hat to a guy who had multiple layers of messages, a talent which, he did a lot with. Everything
Right.
from signing off on the Punisher. Punisher is my favorite comic book character, by the way. But everything from signing off on that to, the literal creation of the X-Men, the messages there about the overreach and overpowering government coming out and striking down people that were different in one way or another, regardless of how he framed it, and created an entire universe out of it. The Spider, like I said, Spider-Man. I mean, what are you going to do? This guy created hundreds and hundreds of characters, many, many worlds, and all of it was for the sake of art. And I know there are some people who think that the esoteric messages in there are a bit evil. But I don't see it that way at all. I think it was absolutely a unique moment in history that we saw a great artist. And no, I'm not saying that he died too soon or that he did not live a full life. I mean, anything like that, I don't make any judgments. I'm saying that it's just sad to see that that unique voice will not be heard from again, Meria.
Well, not on this planet, but I hope he went to a better planet, one of his own design.
That's what I'm hoping for too.
So safe travel, Stan Lee, and don't come back here. Chuck, we need to take a break. Stay with us. Chuck and I will be right back, and I want to talk about Bob Mueller and the possibility of these indictments coming out today. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, this is Meria. I don't often get to talk directly to the listeners here on the Gary Knoll Network, but I felt like doing that today. I know a lot of you really enjoy my show, but you might not know that I do 4 shows a week over at my website, meria.net. So if you're loving the show you get to hear on Sunday, come on over to my site and subscribe, because I've got hundreds of hours of great shows on pretty much every topic in the universe. And that again is meria.net, meria.net. And now we can get back to this excellent show. Thanks. Okay, welcome back to Hell and High Water with myself and Chuck Ochelli. Get over to Ochelli.com. Chuck's got lots of good shows there archived on his site as well. And hey, Chuck, I got to see, I kept meaning to try to get over to YouTube to check your appearance out on Richie Allen's show, but I never seem to get to it. I don't know why. Time just flies. How did your show with Richie go?
Oh, listen, Richie Allen was a very cool guy to just sit and have a conversation with, regardless of how the show, presented to anybody. I enjoyed talking to him. You came up during the conversation, by the way. It was kind of interesting because I said, listen, I call Meria Mom, and he immediately said, oh, I don't think she'd be too happy with that. I said, no, Richie, she's just fine with that.
I don't think Richie has any idea how old I am. But he is a very gracious host. He's always very gracious when I'm on his show.
Oh yeah, no, and he was to me as well. and it was definitely a lot of fun. I got to make a few points, but it was also enjoyable, which is sometimes a rarity
Right.
when they invite you on to sound off about a particular topic. But no, that was very cool, and definitely a quick shout out to Richie for being just a very gracious guy and a very solid individual to just have a conversation with.
Absolutely.
And I love listening to you talk with him. As you do about once a month or once every 2 months.
Well, he wants to do it once a month, but we never seem to do that. Sometimes he forgets about me for several months, and then his listeners start saying, "Get Meria back on the show." So you know how it goes. Listen, I'm very anal when it comes to booking my shows. I have people pitch me, and I have to tell them my show's booked for the next 3 months because I have to be on a schedule. That's the way I work. Although, last month, because there was such a flurry of so much going on, I did 5 shows in 1 week. I try to do the best I can, but, I have to take care of myself, too. I got to have a life somewhere in between. But I was glad to see that, Richie had you on his show. And, you need to get more exposure, and that's good. I remember when Dave McGowan used to get pitched by other people's shows, the first thing he would do was call me. And he'd say, "Who is this guy? Are they going to attack me? Should I go on the show?" He trusted no one except me. And most of the time I told him, "No, don't go on that person's show." Okay. Yeah. But then, unfortunately, his book really got him more attention than he should have gotten. And it ended up costing him his life. But I don't want to dwell on that because, every now and then I feel him around me. He'll play our song. Our show used to be called Send in the Clowns. So whenever I hear that song, which is not a very popular song anymore, but whenever I hear it, I know he's around. I just keep telling him, "Don't come back here. Just don't come back here." Anyway.
No, because they have definitely sent in a lot of clowns, Meria, for the circus.
Oh, yeah. We have a clown as president now, and he's not a funny clown. He's like a scary clown out of a bad horror movie.
Right, but points for originality, though. I've never seen an orange-faced clown before. That's a new one on me.
Well, that's a spray tan. He's got some poor woman in the White House that has to spray him every day because, without that orange on him, he really looks like death warmed over.
Quick question, because you mentioned the Mueller investigation at one point.
Right.
I was wondering what your thoughts were about Jerome Corsi complaining that he might be indicted, and our good friend Roger Stone.
They're all begging for money online. GoFundMe, because they're all shitting their pants. Okay, when I see those stories, especially on Twitter, because Twitter has a much better real news feed than Facebook, I just put in LOL. That's my whole thing. Listen, I've warned people about the fake alternative news out there for 20 years. Okay, and people still support them, give them millions of dollars, and just swallow it up like geese in the rain. Okay. So watching them, go down, I hate to say it, it gives me a sick and twisted little sense of pleasure. And I remember back in the day, a lot of people that used to be on my show, some people whose careers I made on my show, decided to go over to the other side. Okay, that who I'm referring to. Well, once they go on, that site, their careers are ruined. It just takes a few months and their careers are ruined. They become obscure because I think that's why he was put into play. But once their career is ruined and they're down in the toilet, that's when they pitch me to get back on my show. And they don't realize once you've left me for that, you're never getting back on my show because I honor the integrity of my show. I'm not going to cry any tears if that's what you're asking me. I'm just going to sit back and laugh.
See, it's funny because I'm sorry to do it this way, but, because a lot of these people would happen to be males, they should know better than to leave a strong woman for what they think is a better opportunity and then to try and crawl back. But apparently that lesson was not learned in their life, so...
Right. Listen, when I'm done with somebody, I'm done. One of my best friends, he can't get over the fact, we've been friends for 20 years. He can't get over the fact that once I say I'm done, I never look back. He just doesn't get it. He's never seen anything like that. And it could be, listen, they opened up a Starbucks in my town, like a sit-in Starbucks. That's a big deal in this dipshit town, right? So we go in there for a coffee, and how do you screw up a coffee with almond milk? Okay. But they screw it up, right? It was all like, Jews have a good word for it. They call it fachada, where the milk is all like breaking up and bad and disgusting and floating and erupting in the cup. So I bring it over to the girl behind the counter, and she gives me basically a meh. That's the answer I got. She didn't say, let me make you a new cup of coffee. Oh, I'm sorry this happened. No, she just took it from me and gave me like a shrug with the meh. Nobody gives me the meh, okay? So I went back to the table and I told my friend what happened, and I said, I am never coming back in here. He says, what do you mean? And he knows when I say that, it's never going to happen. Nothing will get me back in that place. And I'm just using that as an example. With my exes, same thing. When I'm done with you, I'm done with you. I don't care if you're alive or dead. I don't care if you're breathing. I don't care if you're happy or sad. You no longer exist. Even when I moved out of one of my houses, he says, you just kept your face moving forward. You didn't even turn around to take a last look. And I said, why would I? When I'm done, I'm done. And that's just my makeup. I don't know if it's Italian. I don't know if it's just who I am. I don't know if my father gave me that. I don't care where it came from. But if somebody slights me like that on my own show, and listen, I fired several of my own students for turning on me or criticizing my work. When I'm done, you no longer exist. I have that wonderful ability to just turn it out, just tune it off. And I mean, I had some people begging me repeatedly to get back on my show. And I was like, yeah, that's never going to happen. Stop writing me or I'm going to press charges for harassment. That's how bad it had to get, okay?
Yikes.
And I won't mention names, but listen, I could be the nicest person in the world, but I can't help it, like, what was it, Jessica Rabbit? I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way. So as long as everybody leaves me alone, I'm a happy girl. But if you don't, guess what? It's going to get ugly. I'm hoping that, a lot of these kids that got into office, especially this girl from, New York, when I was a kid, we didn't have any black people in my neighborhood, but we had a lot of Puerto Ricans, okay? So it was, pretty much the Italians versus the Puerto Ricans, but the girls were different. They were my friends, okay? And when I look at this young girl, Ocasio, she reminds me of a girl I went through all of junior high school with. She was like my best friend. Her name was Aida, but in English we called her Ada. You need to have these young women that actually have more courage and I hate to say it, more balls than most of the men that ran for office. Because women have had it. It's time for women to take a stand. 333 women, Chuck, were elected in this midterm. That's phenomenal. And as you know, that's Steve Bannon's worst nightmare. He said that women are going to take over. Like that's a bad thing.
Oh, yeah. And, interesting. If we were able to pay attention to anything other than the nonsense, we might look at the fact that Bannon has gone to Europe now to try and spread
his fascism.
Whatever that is, over to there. And,
right.
Wow.
Did you see
He's
that
canonizing politics in Europe.
Did you see that he had a couple of meetups with his conservatives? He was having these big events, and only 17 people showed up at one, and less than 30 showed up at another?
Yeah.
That gave me I have to tell you, that gives me such joy, and that little impish evil child that lives inside of me was laughing as loud as she could possibly laugh. And I was like, my mother used to say, and I believe her, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
And, it's coming from the same part of your gut that's giggling at Roger Stone, who, again, has this very interesting sort of past, if you study it carefully. And it's just the guy who was in Trump's ear all this time magically now is crying that he needs help with his legal fees on, sites or whatever. I'm not even going to say where it is. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but why isn't his buddy Trump paying for it? Wasn't Trump going to pay for all his wild fans if they attacked anybody at his campaign? Didn't he say, I'll pay you legal fees? Why isn't he paying legal fees for him or for Corsi or for Michael Cohen? who, by the way, spent the greater part of the day yesterday with Bob Mueller. So I think that Mueller knows what he needs to know to get this started, and I truly hope he doesn't disappoint us and the indictments start flowing fast and furious this week.
Well, that's the thing is that, if they try and derail this investigation, he could possibly hand it over to so many different places that it would be virtually impossible for him to, for Trump, that is, to sort of plug all of the holes in the dike,
Right.
so to speak.
Right.
The old cartoon where the guy sticks all his fingers in the different holes and then starts putting his feet on it and
Right.
his head on it eventually, and the thing breaks anyway.
Right. Well, if you remember
that's a possibility.
when Nixon tried to do the same thing and stop the Watergate investigation, back in those days, they didn't have thumb drives to put all their information on. People were stuffing papers in their clothes on their way out, okay? The evidence in their clothes, inside their clothes. Today, there's probably 1 million thumb drives with all kinds of information in the hands of a lot of other people, just in case. But again, Trump doesn't know anything about cybersecurity. He wouldn't be using an insecure phone. And he doesn't care about it until it's used against him. So I'm hoping whatever it is, I said, just let Mueller take it to the New York Times.
Yeah, listen, I would love to see that, but I would love to see even more if the system actually works. I don't hold out a lot of faith in the system itself, though. That's the trouble.
I don't either. And listen, the system doesn't want to be fixed because it was set up this way. I mean, look at the Senate. You talked about, Trump and his secret agenda. The Senate now has so many fascists like Trump in it, old white men. And they only represent 18% of Americans. And yet the Senate is there. So, the House has a big job to do, but how much can they get done if you only have 18% of the American people represented in the Senate and now on the Supreme Court?
Well, seemingly unrelated question, Meria, because we also had the news story go by that Ruth Bader Ginsburg broke some ribs and everybody held their breath for a couple of minutes across the country who has sanity left in them. But on top of that, do you find yourself on occasion taking a look at, say, the C-SPAN feed of what's going on in the Senate and watching a committee discussion, and all of a sudden a name or an individual's name comes up and you say to yourself, wow, that guy is still alive?
Right.
Do you do that?
Absolutely. They all like The Walking Dead. Listen, I'm no spring chicken either, okay? But I can tell you that I could run leaps around any of those old men, especially Chuck Grassley. I look at him and I'm like, lay down. You're already dead. How do you not know? Why's your body still moving around? Or Orrin Hatch or the rest of them. This is now, we have to become, you remember that movie, No Country for Old Men? It should be No Country for Old White Men. And we need to get them out of the Senate because they think like it's, 1940. And it's not 1940 anymore. We don't want their poor choice of what they consider morality ruling over the rest of us. And a couple of atheists got in this year. And that was like my dream my whole life. I want nothing but atheists in office because I don't want anybody pushing their religion on us. That's not what our country was founded on. And yet I know a lot of people who still believe we were founded on Christian beliefs and that we're a Christian nation. I'm sure you saw the story where, I forget which town it was. I said it yesterday, I think, on my show. Where people were giving food to the homeless, the government comes in and pours bleach on the food because they didn't have a license to give it out to the homeless. Don't tell me we're Christian. Right. Sickening.
No, absolutely not. What we have is a giant hypocrisy, and you can pick your flavor, you can pick your religious affiliation, your political affiliation, because conservatives are not conservative, and a lot of the people that claim to be liberals are just corporatist shills anyway. Mm-hmm. So this is what we're looking at now. I wanted to let you know something really quickly. One of the court cases in Georgia, I just saw it was just announced as we're speaking, has a judge has now ordered them to stop rejecting absentee ballots in a couple of counties in Georgia. So that is still as yet uncounted. It is a possibility that the first black woman governor could be elected in Georgia, although there's quite a hill to climb there still, right, considering the fact that her opponent was literally in charge of the selection process here in the state of Georgia, where I am sitting. But I just figured I'd give you that little local
No,
update
I
while you
think
were
that
telling me
that's
about
great.
Arizona.
It's even great that she's pretty much Thai, a black woman in Georgia. Think about that. That she's pretty much Thai. But, Greg Palast has been on Kemp's ass since the beginning. And when he came out with, saying he was going to sue Kemp, that's when he got the list of the purged voters. And, listen, I've got to constantly give props to Greg Palast for his work on stolen elections since 2000. And he doesn't quit. He just keeps going. Chris Korback, Mr. Crosscheck, he lost, okay? So, there were some good things that came out of this. People are waking up. Okay, it took me since 2000 for people to learn how our elections are stolen right in front of our faces. But as far as Georgia, Florida, any of them, what's so important that they have to announce results on election night? That disqualifies all the military votes overseas that come in through the mail that they have until November 16th to get in. So if you don't allow the military votes to be counted, why the hell are they even in the military? They're certainly not getting any respect or help from this government. The GI Bill has been stuck for 80,000 GIs not getting any of their GI benefits now for months and months, and they say it's a computer problem. I mean, come on. How long does it take to fix a computer problem? So, interesting days, Chuck.
No, certainly, and this after the Trump administration, by the way, turned around and said that they were going to fix all of that, and they're waiting on the fix, mind you, and their GIs, former servicemen who are losing their homes, dropping out of school after they went to go get their education because they paid for it with their blood, sweat, and tears. Say what you will about the military, but there are people here that were true believers that attempted to do what they thought was the right thing and defend their neighbors, their home, and they should not be treated as they are. But then again, a guy who is so concerned about terrorism and how things work.
Hey, your phone is bubbling up. Are you moving around?
I'm sorry about that, but a guy who was, can you hear me okay now?
Now I can, yeah.
Okay, a guy who was so concerned about terrorism, Trump, mind you, it also closed an office that tracked, former Guantanamo Bay inmates, for some odd reason, and now there's no idea where they went, pretty much like some of those children they had in cages, and they can't track any of that, and they're not aware of the fact that there are veterans literally losing their homes, losing their after-action education, so on and so forth. I guess they're just not aware of any of the damage they're doing. So, mens rea, we can't blame them because it's not in their mindset. I guess if you ignore it, it doesn't exist. And so long as you pay off your friends, you continue to...
Well, what about the 5,600 troops he sent to the border, where they're going to be stuck there for the holidays, where they legally can't do anything against the caravans if it ever shows up? They legally can't. So why are those poor bastards stuck on the border, creating a fake situation of, for future defense, building little homes? They have no electricity. They're away from their family. It's going to cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. All because Trump wanted to make a political move and demonize this caravan that at the time was like 1,000 miles away. And nobody's talking about it now. It's like it became a non-story as soon as the election happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happened to this impending invasion from these
They're going to
people
throw
with
rocks
leprosy?
In our face. Right.
Leprosy and Middle Easterners, and I heard one commentator say they're all carrying 75 pounds of marijuana, which wouldn't bother me any, but they're not. And all that stuff that was supposed to be coming our way, the invading horde, if you will, of barbarians at the border, I guess. I don't know, sounds like Roman speak to me, but odd thing, not such a pressing issue now.
And even though the Pentagon told Trump before he started spewing his fear campaign that every time you have a situation like that, maybe 10% end up, at our border, he still did what he did. So now you got all the same people that are rah-rah sis boom barring against this caravan who are about to get ready to celebrate another caravan that happened in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. And I think about the fact that, here's everybody getting ready to celebrate Christmas. When Christ was a Middle Easterner, he was homeless. He was a part of a caravan. What would they do? Would they stone him or shoot him dead at the border? Probably.
Yeah, I wonder what they would do with the old story of Mary being pregnant, showing up in a foreign land, effectively, with no room at the inn, I guess.
Right.
Would you even provide them with the animal stable so that you could give birth to your Savior that didn't actually live?
Right.
I wonder if that's a possibility for these Christians who, don't think that foreigners should be welcomed in any way, shape, or form, regardless of their circumstance, because, oh, wait a minute, we have such a thriving, beautiful economy. We can't absorb these people? I mean,
right.
Aren't they claiming that employers are desperately searching for workers? Isn't this their claim? Although it's not, part of the reality here on the streets, Meria. But isn't that their claim? And don't we need more people, because there's just so many jobs and opportunities out there that I can't seem to find anywhere near me, and I don't know anybody who can. But isn't it amazing?
I agree. Well, as Michael Ray Kia tends to say every December he's on my show. He says, here we go again. He says, people getting ready to celebrate the messenger when they never got the message. And now I'm going to have to end on that happy little note, Chuck, because we're out of time.
It flies right by every month, Meria, and it's just such a privilege. I want to thank you again for doing this with me once a month, and it's unfortunate that we have to spend time on what we do. I would have rather devoted the entire show to talking about Stan Lee and the things he did.
Me too.
But
hey, we got to deal. We got to deal with the days we have until we don't.
You got it.
All right, Chuck. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Yep.
Bye. Chuck Ochelli. Check him out at Ochelli.com. And again, thanks for supporting the show. Let your friends know about the show. Because believe it or not, after all these years, people still say, you have a show on social media to me. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Anyway, I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening and supporting The Meria Show. Tell others what you learned today. Knowledge becomes wisdom only when it's shared. Encourage others to subscribe today. www.meria.net. Often imitated, never duplicated. A world of information all in one place. www.meria.net. Always ahead of the curve. Always on your side. Get active or get radioactive. Subscribe today.